Welcome back to an extra bit. Today we're going to upgrade my existing machine that is not necessarily a retro topic, but it's long overdue. My current computer I use for most of the content creation and, some gaming too. It's just getting a little old. So I figured it was time to get a new modern processor above all to get better rendering speeds and content creation speed, I guess, in general. So we're going to take some parts out of my old machine and we're going to combine that with some new parts that I just ordered, or just got, and we're going to make, hopefully, a much more powerful machine for what I need it for. So, not so much a gaming focus tonight, or retro focus technically, but here's that upgrade. Alright, so what you're looking at is the current Rick's Random Retro rendering rig, if you will. And it serves its purpose, absolutely, but it's time to upgrade. So, I just need a few components out of this machine that I'm going to elect to buy later as far as upgrades go. First off is a video card, which with today's market, I'm not really buying an upgrade anytime soon. I'm just going to keep this one for now. I need the memory out of here and also the power supply. So those are the parts we're going to take out today, which should be pretty quick, fingers crossed. I should also mention one of the reasons I'm doing this upgrade, partly with the case. Yes, it's filthy. I'm sorry. We'll clean this stuff off, but the intake on this NZXT case, which has worked fine, is pretty limited. It's been fine for this purpose, but from what I'm putting in the new machine, I really wanted something that has a lot more airflow in the front. And this case, if you twist it here, sorry about the noise, it's completely solid, which looks cool, but that's kind of detrimental to the airflow, of course. There's only a couple of spots here that air can come in. As I said, it's worked fine so far, but considering the new processor I'm putting in, I wanted a lot more practical airflow through. So that's one of the reasons I'm getting a new case, and also to have the drive base and all the extra space. So it's been a fine case, probably use it for something else, but in this case here, we're going to replace the case. And boy, it really is not until you start taking a case apart you see how actually dirty it is, but I'm going to try and do this a little bit here, start taking stuff out. It is just very dusty. Well, I suppose that's to be expected, so let's see if I can get this video card out of here. That'll give us a lot more room. Boy, yeah, these have been in there for a long time and probably have been bent a little bit in the process. Yeah, sad state of the current video card market is that there's no way I'm going to be able to buy a new video card right now. I'll just buy my time. The 1080 has served me quite well, actually, so we'll just give it a kind of a quick cleanup and then bring it over to the next machine. There goes the 1080. Still a quite good looking card, actually. So yeah, this is the GeForce GTX 1080 from EVJ, the Superclock model SC. Bought it brand new, obviously, and it's really worked really well. It's a great card. Next, we do need to take out the data path capture card, which if you watch any of my live streams, that's where I do, or anything really. I capture just about everything from that. So let's see if I can get a better angle here. Difficult to film this at the same time. So this is the data path capture card then that has a custom bracket 3D printed. Long story on that one, but it does work. This is a really good tool for what I use it for. We also will be taking out the solid-state hard drive here. Boy, this is just really dirty, isn't it? Let's see, I think this comes out with just a simple bracket here. There we go. So we'll have to extract that from this little bay here that it sits in. Let's kind of make the slide in here. Whew, it's really dirty. All right, we do need the memory sticks, so grab those. Just can't really see that all in the bowels of the machine here, but I will upgrade memory later probably. Just right now, I'll be fine using what I have, so we can get those out of here. There's one, and there's two. So just 16 gig of DDR4 memory. I think it's like 3200 or 3000, but I'll upgrade these later probably. For now, this would work just fine. Next comes the fun part, which is extracting the power supply, which is hooked in. I do have these like special custom braided cables, but Let's reuse that. Try and thread that through here. Thread that through here. Now comes the hideous part, which is the back that was kind of hidden from sight before, but now it's here in all its glory. So actually we need to unplug the second pin header here on the ATX power cable, which is, boy, this case is a really good clean. My goodness. Come on. What is that stuck on? It's on the wrong side. There we go. First try. There we go. There's that. Of course, now we have the power supply here. This is a modular EVGA power supply. So the cables will actually detach from the power supply itself. That will help us a lot here in the disassembly, I hope. Let's go unscrew the power supply maybe. All right then, with that little detour in mind, we got everything we need out of this machine. So that would be our 650 watt power supply. We have our GeForce 1080 stacked precariously on top of there. We have our data path capture card. We'll need that. And we have our 2 sticks of 8 gig memory piece, total 16. And my old SSD, which will go in the new machine. So let's take a look at the new components. All right, first off, starting with the case. This is a Fantech, let's see, Entho Pro, and it's just a beast. This is then a full-size tower case. And the reason I wanted a full-size tower is that I want a dry base this time. I wanted something where I could put actual DVD or Blu-ray burners and everything without having to sacrifice that, because the old case had no external dry base. And this one, of course, then has 3. The fourth one up here is just the cover plate for some of the USB expansions and everything. But it's just enormous compared to the other one. Just, you know, for scale, I'm trying to think here now. Here's, you know, here's the SSD we're going to put in this guy, right? It's just dwarfed by this case. And again, I wanted something that had room to grow and all the space I would really ever need in almost like a workstation style case with plenty of airflow. So there's a big fan in the front here that pulls in air. And there's a big exhaust fan there. That coupled with the cooler we're going to use should provide plenty of like throughput of air for the new processor, because I didn't want to have any problems with using air cooling to keep this thing nice and cool. So let's see if we can open this case and take a look inside. These screws are in here pretty good the first time. Let's see if I can use the screwdriver to get them out here. But I have not had a full-size case in a long time, so I'm excited to mess with that. I think this is still classified as a mid-tower case technically, but it's, yeah, it's a big one. So yeah, plenty of room to work in here. It comes with a little accessory kit. We'll take a look at that as well. Tons of extra screws and everything, but it is just ginormous. Maybe I can lift up the old case here so you can see in comparison the size difference here. So here's the old case done, which is now, of course, in pieces. I can almost fit that case inside the other one. That's the size difference we're dealing with. So, but yeah, it has dry base for 525, and it has from the other side here also 2 full base for 3.5 inch drives, hard drives, which I won't be using, of course, all of them, but I want to have the option to expand on it. Plenty of room, plenty of airflow, basically a workstation grade case. So let's take a look at what's in the accessory kit here. We can get that out of here. Of course, got plenty of cable runs and everything, so you can get it decently organized. Those are some long twisty ties. Let's see here, take a look at the camera so I can actually see what I'm looking at here. But we have a nice little accessory box that, I believe, yep, comes with a nice manual. Tells us how to install it. Zip ties, some quick guides, and something really cool. I knew this was coming with this, but this is actually like a plastic divider screw case for all the screws you might need for this, and that's awesome. Easy way to keep that organized. And then we have, I believe, I'm honestly not sure what this is for. I'm sure I'll find out in the manual later, but anyway, another piece of metal. I'm sure it goes somewhere. And let's take a look and spin this case around. Take a look on the other side. Because yeah, that is just a massive case. So much room, a huge fan in the front there. This entire thing is the fan here. And then you can mount an SSD here, of course, if you want to, which is then visible in the window that's on the front. You can also mount on the back, I'm pretty sure. So let's flip this thing around. Oh my goodness. Of course, yeah, plenty of room for the power supply down there and everything. So let's go ahead and open the case up on this side. First time the screws are coming out. I kind of wanted a case that would just give me no compromises, besides space, then of course it's huge. There was a mid-size model of this, I believe, as well, but at least when I was shopping for this, I could not find any more. It looks like it was pretty short-lived compared to the full-size ones. You can see all the glorious cable management, including a fan header controller here, but you can see all the drive bays here for 3.5-inch drives. You could fit so much in here. I won't be using that, and I believe this entire cage comes out, too, so I'll take one out. Really, all I need right now is an SSD, probably mounted here or in the front, but really what I wanted to do was to have the option to grow with this. If I ever want to throw in extra drives for, workstation purposes, rendering, video, whatever it might be, I have room to grow. I have a server too, but this gives me a lot of flexibility. Now I know that it has a fan header here that can control the fans that are built in. So you plug this into the CPU fan header. You can then hook up stuff to this, and this controller can then be controlled using the PVM or PWM fan controller stuff from your motherboard. So it's just massive case. And for the price, I can't really complain. I just wanted something that has all the room I need ever. And I think this one fits the bill. So the case, we're solid on, although it's massive. It's big. Let's take a look at some of the other parts too. For the motherboard, of course, we need something to support our nice processor we'll get to here in a second. But so I chose the MSI B55 or B550 Tomahawk. I don't think it's necessarily a high frills motherboard, if that makes sense, but it's going to do what I need it to do. And really, again, the processor is kind of the main event of this whole thing, but the motherboard does have pretty much all the features I would need on it. See if I can get it out of the bag here. Some nice black design. We're not worried too much about the aesthetics, but it doesn't hurt. So yeah, we have a nice solid board with the slot we need, memory. We have M2 spots, and it's got built-in audio and everything I need. I will probably have to add some USB expansion ports on this guy, just because I didn't have that much. But 2 network adapters built in, which actually I do use, actually required for me. But probably not as many USB ports as I would like, but still, it's just for the price, it's pretty much perfect what I need it for. So there you go. See if I can get in the frame too. So yeah, that's the MAG B550 Tomahawk, ready for the Generation 3 Ryzen processors, or Zen architecture, whatever it is. Yeah, those processor, the thing we're going to show in a second. And bloop. Of course, then the kind of the almost the main event here, of course, is our Ryzen 7 5800X processor. So this was basically the best I could do for the budget I had currently to build, but I think it will provide a substantial boost for us, considering I was running on i5 6600K, which is a fine processor, but this one, more cores are better in the case when you're doing video editing, video re-encoding, content creation in general. So yeah, the 5900X is definitely a faster and stronger processor, but again, for the budget I set for this gave me the best bang for my buck. So this we're going to install. We'll unbox this here in a short moment, but pretty funny with these processors being so small. You have a huge box for what is essentially just a tiny, tiny chip. So yeah. Now, to cool that processor, we need some serious air cooling. I'm not going with water cooling, so we have a massive Noctua or NHD15, sorry, Chromax Black, which is a kind of like a dual layer, really big air cooler. And put that in perspective, the processor here is just kind of dwarfing that little guy. And it's just a solid chunk of cooling. I'm hoping this should be enough, especially with that case then having a large intake fan and a large out fan. That should be enough to kind of cycle air through the whole thing very easily. I didn't want to deal with air cooling, or water cooling, sorry. Just kind of wanted to stick with air cooling. That's what I know. It's worked very well for me in the past, so we're going to stick with that as well. We'll open this here in a second. This is just just a massive cooler. Actually, let's just go ahead and open it right now. Take a look at it. So I'm in frame here. All right, so we have mounting system information, all the hardware. We have the heatsink itself. Let's see if I can get it out of the box here. Come on. Whew. And then the fan, extra fan. Well, let's take a look at this guy. Boy, it is well packaged. I'll give him that. That is a cooler. My goodness. I'll get into frame here, but so another fan will go on this guy. But here, yeah, this is just massive. You have a little contact surface down there, but this should be plenty enough cooling for our little processor. So, yeah, that's a big cooler. Cool. And then last, but most certainly not least, we have an NVM2 M2 SSD 980 from Samsung. It's terabyte. There's definitely faster ones with the Pro. I'm going from just a SATA hard drive. This should be a substantial boost. I might upgrade to a Pro in the future, but I don't think I'll actually get much out of having that. This is kind of like a good price for performance for the size and speed. It's a substantial speed boost from my just SATA SSD to this guy that sits directly in the M2 slot using NVMe connection. Should be much, much faster and also more space, because that's what always happens when you're doing content creation is space. You're always running out of space. So this will be our primary storage with the old SATA SSD filling in the rear, basically just as a secondary drive or backup drive. So let's get installing. All right, first things first, of course, we're going to slot in a little processor, which comes, well, really in just this little plastic thing. The whole box here was just to hold that one little plastic thing. So let's extract our processor gently. And, ooh, there's a solid chunk of metal there. Of course, I'm not in the frame at all. There we go, that's better. Nice. Of course, with any processor anymore, and for the longest time, they use, of course, a kind of like a slot-in system, right? That makes it pretty easy to drop these things in. There's no confusion in the way they go and how they socket in. So there you go. The zero insertion force or SIF socket makes that pretty easy. Long gone are the days way back when you kind of had to force these things in. So let's get our memory installed next. That's way over here. Don't think, let's see, we have first, let's see. First are going to be the slot 2s, I believe. So we're going to install the memory in this configuration here. This helps if I do this right. That's one memory module. And the second. All right, that's the memory. It's easy enough. Let's get our SS or NVM2 hard drive installed. Which, of course, is still in box. I'm going to break the seal. I'm excited for this one because, yes, it's definitely not the fastest NVM2 hard drive you can get anymore, but for me, this should be a substantial upgrade or speed boost. It's just so funny to me now that hard drives are reduced to just these single little chips, and that's it. You know, you don't need anything more than this. That's the whole hard drive. So that's going to go under here, and we need to remove this kind of cooling unit here first. All right, it's always handy to have one of these little kits that allow you to change out the bit very easily, because this little smaller stuff. This is kind of like a heat shield, I suppose, for this. Or cooling thing. And now, this is just going to slot right in here somewhere. There, easy. And it actually has like a extra layer here that has to be, show us in frame, peeled off here to transfer that heat. So that should keep it cooler and also looking nicer, I suppose, is the idea. But you don't need that separate insulation screw for this, just holds it in place through just that action there and helps cool it so it can run faster. The speed is important. It's just crazy. Now we have hard drive installed and that's it. So hard drive done. All right, what's next? And what's next is getting this big, or should we say massive, cooler installed. But first let's put some thermal paste on here. Just the right amount. Once we have that in place, we're going to go ahead and get this mounted here. I did have to replace the brackets that hold this thing together, of course, and also some tomfoolery with the fan positioning and everything to make that fit properly. But we're not going to show that here, so let's just move forward. Next comes, of course, the fun part of actually fitting the whole motherboard with assembly into the case. The nice part with this thing is that it does not have an I/O shield. It's actually kind of built into the motherboard directly, so it just kind of slots back in here. You can see there's a little gap there, but as we shimmy that back towards the spot, which is still not, super easy, you kind of just slots in there, which saves you a little bit of trouble. Beyond that, it's just a matter of putting all the screws in place to hold the motherboard in the case. But it's not that bad. Just, lots and lots of screws. Fast forward, go. Next step is getting the power supply installed down here in the bay. That has a spot for it, of course. We have the cover right now that kind of tidies things up here removed. That's another strength of this case is that most of the components are removable, making it a snap to work in when you're actually installing things. But it's just a matter of getting the power supply installed and getting that shroud back on. Alright, so I cheated just a little bit here, and as you can see, I've done a lot of the cable management. I hate cable management, so I kind of did it off camera because it's just such a pain. I drew a little blood and everything again. But we have the PSU installed. The shroud is back on. Most of the cable is on the back, so we'll spin around back in a second, which looks eh. We have the power supply cable here for the video card here when that goes in. Put that back in. I'll take out some of the additional drive cages we don't need, but it was not even intentional. It was going to become like this blacked out build, but I guess that's where it's heading, just matte black across the board. Now, when we get the video card in and then also the capture card, which is just green, that will kind of break that a little bit, but you know what? It's just stealth. It's full black. We do have a window on here, but very black and cool. Looks cool. Nice. Alright, so let's see if I can actually get this video card installed from this angle. It's a challenge, but we'll see if we can get it in here. Of course, there's some cables in the way. Always is. Let's say I've been impressed with this card so far. It has a metal backing plate, so it has not sagged really at all. Which is a pleasant surprise. Snap. Nice. Get that secured in there. So it's a beefy card. I'm a fan of EVJ's design and everything on their cards. It's held up real well. Never had any problems with it, so we'll continue using it. There we go. It's supposed to be thumb screws, but I'm finding myself having to use the screwdriver more often than not on these things, so here we are. Get that in there. There's no way around having the power cable, of course, kind of like doing this number. But what are you going to do there? We can hide it a little bit. So it's out of the way here, even though it's kind of popping out there. It's so large. There we go. Just hides it a little bit. We could route it on the back too, so maybe I'll do that instead. This is just all in the way now. So I'll probably just run it through there instead, honestly. All right, I'll do that later here. Let's get the data path card installed because we'll definitely need that. And that's, of course, sitting on this plastic bracket. I might get a metal bracket at some point, but for now, that should work just fine. It does have to go in a similar large PCI Express slot here. How about that one right there? Now, this motherboard doesn't have a lot of extra PCI Express slots, which is fine, honestly. I don't need that many, except just my video card and the capture card. Those are the key components to everything I do. Let's see if we get that in there. That's installed, and here's Zoe wanted to lend a helping hand. You are not helping, Zoe. So yeah, it'd be cool to get a actual black bracket for this card too, and maybe even a metal one. But for now, this 3D printed one has worked just fine. It's still plastic, but it works. There we go. A little tidying up and everything. We'll spin around the case and do a little cleanup and take out some of the extra drive bays that we don't need. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So apologies in advance for any cable routing crazies, if you will, but I am not good at cable routing, so kind of clean it up a little bit. That's probably the best I can do as long as the case closes. I think we're good. It's the back side after all, won't see it, but there are two pretty large drive cages here that I actually don't need right now. These could come in handy for later, but right now I can take these out and improve airflow even more. So they're held on here with a couple of thumb screws, I believe. So once these come out, very quickly apparently, see, I think we have one more here for each. They're supposed to be thumb screws, but I have a feeling these were attached with something sturdier from the factory, because these thumb screws do not want to turn at all. Let's use a screwdriver, that's fine. What's cool, it gives you this option that if you're not going to use these drive bays, or drive cages, then you can just slide the whole thing out. And now the fan, you can see this is a pretty substantial drive cage. This would then fit 3 plus 3 is a total of 6 3.5-inch drives. That gives you a lot of expandability if you want to make this into basically like a RAID machine or a server, basically, or just heavy-duty workstation, and of course with lots and lots of extra drives. We'll take that out as well. Look at that. Look at how much extra airflow there is there now. So we don't need that in there. I might add that later if I do need it, but there's a massive fan up front here that will then be unrestricted in the airflow. The SSD is also mounted down here, which I think is pretty neat. It has these little grommets that it mounts to this bracket. They only came with one bracket, sadly, so... but again, I don't need more drives right now. If I do, I could always just put them in these cages. But for now, we're going to close this up here on this side at least, because we're done on this side here. We got everything routed the way we need it to. It's fine there. And then we have one more really important task to do. Let's put the case back on, or the door back on, and spin around. The last thing we have here now then, so the machine is basically put together. So, you know, fingers crossed it will boot on first try here now, but we have a door with some plastic on it. So there's actually plastic on the inside, so let's... Yep. And... hard to get a grip here. Excuse me. Don't worry, we'll go slower on the outside one. Get the door on there, we'll secure it in a second here, but let's do this slow. Beautiful. All right, the computer is all plugged in, and this will be the first boot then, so fingers crossed. Fans are spinning. Power's on. Zoe's here. Don't in display yet. We'll see. Card's lit up. My monitor off. Zoe. Well, that's a good start. So it's powering on, but no display. So we'll figure it out. It's part of the experience. So it turns out I have too many monitors hooked up. I have a CRT over here, so you can see my primary monitor, and then I have a third monitor over here, way over there, that I use for streaming, and everything showed up on the streaming monitor. So the machine boots. Haha, first try. Second try kind of, but first try. And it just actually picked up the installation I have on the SSD, which is not exactly what I wanted to, so I'll have to go into the BIOS settings and change that so it's a secondary device, or at least not the primary boot one. But it did boot on the first try. So we'll see. Right now, I'm assuming Windows is not going to be too happy, but we're just going to go ahead and reload Windows on the secondary drive, or the proper drive, the NVM2 drive and everything. And that should be it. It booted! Huzzah! Alright, so after Windows is loaded up and everything, what's the performance like? Well, just to kind of recap a little bit of what it was before, it was pretty sluggish to move around the editor in the timeline of the software I use called Film Express. And, I mean, it was fine. It wasn't, like, horrible or anything, but I had to, use the final, preview rendering resolution kind of lower to make it run snappier and everything. And it would stutter and sometimes even, freeze up or whatever as it was reading in both from the SSD and also just the processor being overwhelmed. Now, switching to the new one, this is just so much snappier. It's hard to even describe. The software is actually working the way I'm expecting it to. It's not locking up. It's not freezing. All the previews load quickly. I can scrub around the timeline. It just feels so much better to use. And it's really hard to describe or quantify that even. Now, as far as actually rendering a video, I took the Mac one I did most recently here, so making of this video, and looking at the original render time, that was about 18 minutes, and now with the new processor, I re-rendered it, it was down to 11. That may not seem like a huge deal on paper, but it saves so much time over time. I also went ahead before the upgrade and did an encoding test or re-encode test using Handbrake, simply taking that same Mac video and just re-encoding it to 1080p. And this dropped it from almost 8 minutes down to under 3. I mean, just raw performance tasks like that are just so much quicker, and yeah, that's going to be a huge help. So then, with all said and done, looking at the upgrade, was it actually worth it? Absolutely. The computer is just so much snappier to use. It's quicker in all the content creation software I use. Between the time saves and just the less frustration, yeah, it's massive. I said massive again, didn't I? Anyway, also I did stream with this, and before where my CPU was hovering 75 to 100% before, now it's down to 15, 20% or so. So much more overhead, and I'm hoping that should provide a smoother experience in general too. All in all, it's just been a fantastic upgrade, and I'm super happy considering the budget I set and what I got out of this machine. It's just great. Massive. Anyway, I appreciate you watching this very long extra bit, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.